and welcome back to another episode of the Zero Empty Spaces podcast, episode 83, with Downtown Minneapolis Economic Development Director Lisa Middag, here from our first space in Minneapolis at 815 Nicollet in the Nicollet Mall, the former Walgreens space, which Lisa played a large part in helping us activate and make possible. For those of you that are not familiar with Zero Empty Spaces, myself, Evan Snow, and my business partner, Mr. Andrew Martineau, started an initiative to activate vacant commercial real estate spaces as a vacancy management creative placemaking solution, so artists could have space to create and collaborate affordably outside their homes, which obviously provides a myriad of win-win-win benefits, while also providing a myriad of win-win-win benefits for the property owners and developers that we support with this vacancy management solution while their space is vacant, along with city, downtown, business improvement districts, economic development officers who are also working to bring activity, life, and positive impact, which we're doing. And this was actually a big day for that here in Minneapolis, which we'll dive into a little bit. But without much further ado, for those that are not familiar with you, maybe just, you could give us a little bit of a high-level overview of who you are, what your role entails, and what drew you to economic development and placemaking, and what continues to energize you about the work happening here in downtown Minneapolis.
Sure, thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you, Evan. That's awesome. My pathway to place, which I sometimes will ask people, what's your pathway to place? Really came through the arts. I spent about 15 years working at that Walker Art Center, and while I was there, learning about art design, user experience, getting involved in my local community and community development, decided I was going to go to grad school and make a career transition away from fine art publishing and design studio management into this work. Went to the Humphrey School, graduated, went to work for Hennepin County for a while in their community and economic development area. And for me, because I had this background in the arts, because I worked with artists, I was always interested in how and what arts can bring to the equation of public space and how people interface with it. So when I landed with the Downtown Council and Downtown Improvement District, I was there as the inaugural director of Nicollet Activation. So my job was to activate Nicollet, this, at the time, newly renovated public space. So this was 2018, and we brought a number of sort of placemaking strategies to do that, including our street performer program called Street Show, which we still operate today, created the first Downtown Street Art Festival, which ran for several years, and a number of other things to activate space on Nicollet, including opening a Nicollet community space. So that was sort of how I oriented to the work.
Wow.
And it really was through the doing of all that, I would call it placemaking efforts and initiatives, and just watching what changes about a place when you have that work going on, and then when it's not there, and what's it like when it's gone. And becoming very convinced that as great as placemaking is, and I'm still a huge advocate for it, if you have to do it perpetually in front of a vacant building, you just can't, the win-win-win isn't quite there. The experience is great while people are there experiencing the placemaking activity, but then when it's gone, it takes all the energy with it, and you're left with this space that just feels haunted in a way by its many pasts, whether they're real, symbolic, all of that, and it just feels like a completely different space then. So that's kind of how I started to focus more on the economic development side of the work.
Amazing, and I appreciate you correlating that, because you go to a place like Asheville and you see buskers,
Asheville.
Right? Or you go to any of these great cities or street performers or whatever. And, most people that don't know about placemaking or, all the things that go into it, they think these people just organically showed up. And in some instances they do, but you should have a permit or it's going to be, a problem. So there is so much planning, preparation, curation that goes into these things to have it be done well and successfully. And you guys have taken a lot of steps and a lot of efforts to do that. But for people who may not fully understand the scope of your role, how does your office work with the city of Minneapolis, which is separate, property owners, businesses, residents, artists, and community partners to help shape a stronger downtown, especially from your lens of economic development?
Right. So we're two 501c6s that are nested together that work on making downtown great, vibrant, right? So we have a membership-based org and we have the business improvement district that together function. But you're right, we are like that kind of glue in between public and private that can kind of help make things happen, and usually in a different way. If that makes sense, then public can do it or a private can do it.
Right.
We do a fair amount of our economic development work right now on a fee-for-service contract with the city of Minneapolis. So they're funding our efforts to help revitalize downtown. So most of the work we do is in basically 3 lines, I would say. Like, one pocket is really around commercial real estate, like advocacy and convening, and we're always paying attention to what's happening in the market and where are the vacant spaces and how do we approach both collecting information on those spaces, but also like how can we help animate them with temporary programming, pop-up kinds of things, right? There's another chunk of our work that's really focused on the economic data and the realities of where is downtown at, how do we tell the story of downtown through that data. So we stood up our downtown dashboard, which we didn't have for downtown normally, right? So now you can go and you can see what does it look for residential, what's it looking like for hospitality, for office, and all of that data is right there. And we are able to be like the resource and tell that story compellingly. And then the third kind of, I would say, sort of pillar of what we do is really around small business development. That gets us involved in the retail scene pretty significantly. We also have a BIPOC and women's entrepreneurship program called the Chameleon Program, which since 2019 has focused on like the equity stake in making the downtown economy work for a more representative audience of entrepreneurs in our community. So like those basic pieces, and we do them all in partnership with the city, in partnership with local community orgs, with small businesses, with our tourism bureau, like Meet Minneapolis. So it really is, it's always that takes a village mentality to make things happen downtown. Obviously, the city has to focus broadly. Like the city of Minneapolis has more than 450,000 people, I think, now at this point, and downtown is certainly critical and key, but it's not the only thing they have to worry about. So having an organization like us that stays focused downtown, same is kind of true for the chamber, right? They're focused on business, but they have to think a little bit more broadly. For us, it's like, if you're in between 94 and 35 and this area, like that's our special place we really want to foster and take care of. So I hope that answers.
Yeah, no, that was great. And it's interesting that you mentioned like the fee for service and the 501c6, because not every downtown improvement district or downtown development authority or business improvement district, as some people might know them, are the same. Some of them derive their funds from tax base and different, funding mechanisms.
Right.
And some of them are tasked with different responsibilities depending on the state of the city and the
right,
town.
and the resource that we use for economic development specifically comes from the fee-for-service contract. Obviously, our business improvement district, we have that special service fee authority that hits all the property owners on their tax statement, and they pay for clean, green, safe services as bids all over the country do. So
which are very well on display and very well executed, I shall say, as we are here really in the heart of downtown at Nicollet Mall. For those that maybe are not familiar geographically, could you maybe help orient those to where we are currently located and positioned?
Absolutely. So this building we're in right now is at the heart of, I would say, Minneapolis's downtown Main Street. For years and years, it's been called Nicollet Mall. So it was designed in like the early 70s. It was trying to lure people back who had sort of fled to the suburbs. And the idea was to create like a compelling shopping experience downtown. It has shifted over time. Like through the 80s and 90s became much, much more focused on large scale employers. And it is truly the CBD of Minneapolis. And so along with COVID and all the things that happened, it has shifted what this space can be and how it works, and has really changed what our retail is. So where we're located, Nicollet is the main drag, but we're parallel to Hennepin. Hennepin's like our theater district, really. And then you go one more parallel block over to First Avenue, and then you're kind of in the heart of our entertainment district. So there's this like parallel sense of parallel, right? Where Nicollet has been, historically was, pre the development of the mall in the early 70s, was like the shopping for the whole last century, was the shopping center of downtown, right? So much has changed since then that like we're incredibly over retailed in the core here. Like we have, I don't know, something like 200 square feet per capita which is an extraordinary rate of retail to have. And so a lot of what we're trying to do to answer these challenges economically is like, how do we repurpose all of this retail space, which brings us to like really terrific solutions like the one we're sitting in right now. So
thank you very much. And it is such a icon. I mean, there's a lot of history here. Obviously, we're down the block from the Dayton's project.
Yeah.
We're blocks from the stadiums and, you know, a bunch of other big company headquarters. So this is truly a vital component, not just economically, but to the heartbeat and the life of the city of Minneapolis, not just the downtown. And suffice it to say, you know, very humbly, your theater district, arguably one of the top in the country.
Yeah, we have a string of just jewel historic theaters that attract, you know, Broadway runs and other shows that, I mean, that it's a really compelling way to visit downtown. And one of the challenges we've seen sort of post-COVID is that really we're leading as a social district more than a business district, right? With remote work and really this area in particular in Minneapolis and St. Paul, we've seen has been more challenged to get people back into the office than some other areas. I think we talked about it today. We're at like, what, a 30% return. That's not typical necessarily nationwide. But our entertainment has continued to be strong, has been like where we're leading, you know, on really the robust sort of economic drive of downtown. And so we're trying to figure out how do you make the connections that resonate for people who are coming to work so that they don't just turn around and go back home. Or so that when people come to one of those great, amazing theaters, they don't just show up, turn around and go back home. So it's really about trying to create the experiential space that draws people to downtown. And, you know, I know people say, well, what is their downtown? I mean, I'm obviously a downtown hound for many, many years. Like, to me, what I love about being in any city, and I travel a lot, and I always go into downtown, and I'm always walking around on the streets, and it's always about what you can experience that you'll never have experienced before. Like, you know, if you're in the suburbs and you go into, I don't know, a Restoration Hardware, it's the same one that's in every city you would travel to, right? And so downtowns are where you get that unique flavor of small local businesses that are sometimes only there. You can get them in other smaller commercial areas in a city, but downtown definitely has that too, where the unknown can kind of interface, where you'll run into people from all different walks of life, all different economic spectrums. You know, you've got every race, every cultural background, and it's all like it's I don't want to call it the melting pot idea because that's pretty trite, but the idea that you can run into all of these things in one space, and everyone has, like, it's the space where everyone can come with that. So that's that promise that I think we haven't really pitched well enough to the people who are coming into downtown for those social experiences in order to capture them and keep them here.
Well, we're working on the pitch.
Yeah.
And had a great meeting of the minds today where there's a lot of ideas and energy and desire to strengthen that message and the drive to bring people to downtown. And interestingly, for me, coming from a place where we don't have these historical downtowns, there's other key elements that we haven't even mentioned yet. The architecture, the history. I mean, and the Dayton's project, you know, specifically, and a lot of these are historically preserved buildings that can't get knocked down to build something new for very good reason. So hopefully, a layman person that might be listening to this podcast that might not be in municipal government work or placemaking might leave with a better appreciation for their downtown or downtown Minneapolis or whatever downtown that they might visit. Because these really are the lifeblood and the heart of the city. Generally, this is where City Hall is located. You know, our government, service centers are located.
Most of your Fortune 500s, right? But a lot of great cultural destinations, sporting destinations. Like we have, and which isn't necessarily typical of a lot of cities, we have our football stadium downtown. We have our baseball stadium downtown. We have our basketball stadium downtown. And that drives a lot of traffic into downtown as well. And those are all like concert venues some of the time too. So it's, there's just, I think for people who, there's what do they call it? I think it's like the contempt of the familiar. Like if you know a place that people may bring more disdain to it, or they might have a memory of it that they cling to rather than how it's evolving and what it's becoming. when people visit here from other places, I hear such positive things about this city, about this downtown. When people come from out of state, they're like, it's so clean. I felt safe. Like those, like now that safety conversation, wow, it is such a challenging one because people in our own region don't feel safe coming here. But people who travel a lot are like, this is a pretty safe, like I feel safe in this downtown. So those are some of the challenges we face, I think is, some people say, oh, downtown's a little dirty. It's like, have you been to other cities downtown? We have a really clean downtown. Our DRD folks do an extraordinary job. And we have a lot of wonderful assets for people from out of town to visit, whether it's our riverfront and the Stone Arch Bridge to like the Walker Art Center and the Sculpture Garden and all the theaters that you mentioned. And there's just so many great things to experience. And downtown kind of connects it all. So, I mean, we got the best, some of the best parks in the country, if not the best parks in the country. So
bike lanes, bikeable, walkable.
Oh man, we've got mobility, and if you like to bike and walk around a city, and I bike and walk around every city that I visit to and travel, we have a great one. And I know it snows a big chunk of the year, but I can tell you that our major trail, they're the first things that get cleared of snow. Like the maintenance and clearance on it is very good, and there are people, not me, I'm more of a 3-season biker, but there are people who bike all winter long too.
And just to make one point on the theater conversation, we're in the studio of Marge J. Buckley, the first artist to move in here to Zero Empty Spaces, Nicolette, who recently completed the McKnight Fellowship in Playwriting at the Playwright Center. Yeah. Now, we talked about the theater district, which does thankfully draw national touring performances, but also caters to local, and not only local or regional performers. Marge, in the last podcast episode we recorded yesterday, Marge relocated here from Boston to become with a BFA in acting, be a performance artist. And truthfully, and I live in, the Broward County, South Florida, Fort Lauderdale area, we don't have that strong of a theater scene. Generally, people have to leave to go other places. So you're catering not just to the Hamilton and the Wicked, which I guess
the big Broadway shows, but also smaller community-based theater. I mean, I don't know when this stat is from, and you can tag me on it if it's not quite true. But we used to say we were like second in the country, only to New York for theaters per capita.
I think that's accurate.
So I haven't checked it recently, but know that if it's not perfectly accurate, it is mostly accurate. Because there are a lot of theaters. There's a lot of local theater. There's also local dance that's significant. Yeah. There's local arts here in Minneapolis. It is a very, very strong arts-based community. And it was an interesting notion when we started talking about Zero Empty Spaces entering it, because I know when we talk with you, you're like, most places we go don't have a lot of studio space available. And we actually have a decent amount of studio space.
Hundreds.
But it's not all economic. And it's very little of it is downtown. We've seen more development recently in the Kickernick building and now in the Lumber Exchange building, which the folks who own the Kickernick just bought. But that stuff's going to price out most people. Like it's not that it's so expensive, but it's not cheap. I just think there are so many different ways this community turns out for its art and artists. Like they lead in so many ways. A lot of our ways we've learned to adjust to cultural challenges we face. And Minneapolis, I'm sure people are familiar with this, faced a lot in the last 7 years, with everything from George Floyd's murder and all that happened after it, to getting through COVID, to the recent ICE occupation of our city. And like artists often lead the way through like, how do we adapt? How do we articulate what we went through? How do we recover? How do we heal? How do we express it? And that's been really central, I think, to the experience of art in Minneapolis and what artists can bring. Rojo Collective is going in right up the street, so you'll have good company here at Zero Empty Spaces for another arts collective that is a long legacy organization of collective artists who've been working together for years. And it's just, the more you get to know us as a community, the more you learn, arts is concentrated here, affordability, people who live here and have only lived here don't think of this as a very affordable place. And we certainly have our challenges, and we want to avoid displacement. And there affordable housing needs more work, but the reality is if you compare us as an arts community to other arts communities around the country, we are a more affordable place for artists to live and succeed.
Undoubtedly. And interestingly enough, we discovered on our exercise during the first open house preview that we did, where we had upwards of 30 to 40 artists that came, we polled them and said, how many of you have a studio outside of your home? And despite the fact that there are hundreds of studios available, affordable, otherwise or not, almost, if I recall, nearly every single one of them said that they didn't have a studio outside their home. And for various reasons that we don't have to extensively get into now, having a studio to create in outside of your home is literally a game changer, a level up for most artists. And the fact that we're able to provide studios here starting at $250 a month on a month-to-month basis with no commission, 24-hour access, the utilities included, and all of that for emerging mid-career and established artists, because we don't overly jury, we try to be more inclusive, really does provide a life-changing, a career-changing opportunity for local artists and creatives to be able to have access to space where, on top of it, there happens to be foot traffic and thousands of people walking by daily and millions of people visiting here annually, which is a very exciting opportunity that thankfully you helped us unlock in partnership with Uncommon Developers, who has this former Walgreens space that had been vacant for a few years, even before COVID.
10 years.
Right?
10 years.
And fortunately, not only are we providing the benefit to and the opportunity and access to the local artisan community, but as we found on this very fun adventure here, activating this space in what is a 100-year-old building, there were a few things that needed to be updated or repaired to make it readily accessible or rentable to the future permanent tenant, because this is a meanwhile use. We do this on a month-to-month lease basis.
Right. I mean, that's Zero Empty Spaces sort of aspect to it. Like, and this has like been a role artists have played in economic development for a long time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like you've got a little rundown area, you move the artists in, and they make it suddenly cool again, usually. And but you're right. Like the really the physical infrastructure we're working with isn't brand new stuff, right? And it's vacant for a reason, and that the longer it's vacant, the rougher it gets around the edges and the harder it is for someone else to see it as a viable space. This space, even though it was vacant, it's in a prime location in downtown, was not appealing to people, and it had become derelict. It was really dirty. Like when you guys came into it, how much cleaning we did, how just even painting it, like what a difference that can make to a space. The beautiful bright walls that like everyone's going to be hanging their art on. As you can see, Marge's work here is just amazing. So I think that way it just completely changes the dynamic of how a space feels and helps people conceive of it differently. So knowing your program is not a forever kind of solution for a vacant space, but a way to help both property owners and people who are visiting into the space to imagine something else could be here. So it's not hard to imagine that with a strong arts community moving through this space, that someone might see it and be caught by the idea of what this building could be in its next iteration in the future. So that is kind of the, I guess the bottom line, the ultimate bottom line we're looking for out of the program, and just really excited to see this space turn.
Which we have demonstrated successfully. Of the 34 spaces we've activated, 27 of them have been permanently leased, with many of them having been vacant for many years prior to our activation. And we like to say, and now have proven, activity creates activity. Some people, cannot envision what their future space can be when they see it vacant versus activated. So, and oftentimes vacant storefronts are viewed strictly as a liability. So from your perspective as a stakeholder, how can cities, property owners, and economic development leaders begin to see vacant spaces as opportunities for experimentation, entrepreneurship, community engagement, and future investment?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the most important question in our work right now, because there is a lot of vacant space out there, right? The enormous changes in the retail market, like it has really taken, I think, until about now. You wouldn't think it would have taken this long, but really it's about now where I'm starting to see property owners realize, oh, traditional retail is not going to be what's going to fill this space. It's hard to believe that 10 years of vacancy wouldn't already have done that, and that COVID and the changes in retail after that. But it's hard to explain the optimism with which property owners think they're going to land the one big credit tenant that's going to be willing to take a space, right? That's just not what we're seeing in downtowns all across the country. So all of us are dealing with these vacant spaces, and the extent to which we can optimize them, pull them together, have programs for them. Like we've started our downtown sort of store activation program, storefront activation program, which we call Minneapolis Spark, the vintage market that's in the first floor of IDS,
where
I bought this amazing, not a vintage dress, but a designer dress for like pennies on the dollar. Like that's the kind of solution that we know helps to reframe the conversation and change what people think is possible. So if you just look at the empty spaces and just like they are just there durably, and you can't get through a conversation on what they could be, and you're not trying popping things in and experimentation with them, it's going to keep the conversation protracted for much longer about what can happen next. They need some help thinking, like embracing the fact that that era of retail is done, and that we need to be looking further and farther in the future to other solutions. So whether the things we were talking about today, in particular, like experiential, immersive style entertainment, obviously a very hot category right now, and kind of everyone wants to land their version of it in their city. But you need a certain amount of space to make that happen. And so some of it is that. Some of it is those demising strategies, right, that will help you take bigger footprints and make them into smaller footprints. This is a former Walgreens space. That's a pretty decent size retail space. It's not a small mom and pop shop that can move into this space. So it's important to think about those kinds of strategies as well. And the city of Minneapolis has an arts and cultural affairs program, which has a rent subsidy program where they work with creatives. That has been brought in. We've been doing routinely activations. There's a holiday market pop-up that happens every year at the Vacancy Project, very successful. So like those strategies, I think, are the answer for what you do with this vacancy as people are sort of resorting their thinking about what's possible. And then we're really going to have to dig in deeper, collaborative partnerships, public and private, and those of us in the middle to answer like what kinds of investments need to happen to make larger shifts. And until those larger shifts can happen, this interim pop-up strategy has to be there to start selling that message and keeping things moving in the meantime.
If you build it, they will come. And yes, does everybody want a Meow Wolf, a Van Gogh experience, Sure, yeah, we want it, but in all reality,
not everyone can afford the $25 million price tag. So that's another piece of it, right? So,
and if you don't have some other key components, if there isn't foot traffic, if there isn't density, if there isn't tourism, if there isn't marketing, if there isn't parking, if there isn't F&B, then those said known immersive interactive component companies are not just going to randomly decide to just make a huge investment in your location, because these are big commitments for big spaces.
Absolutely. Incentives definitely play a role too.
Sure.
And we know when those big immersive uses have moved into places and been successful, there are incentives that are there too. So that's always going to be a challenge at the local level, and where resources can come from. Is there private investor? Is there philanthropy? Like, how do all the pieces of the capital stack that makes a project like that work and pencil out? Where does it all come from? And that's one of the main challenges of redevelopment right now, and it's certainly one of the challenges we face too.
So while it would be great to get well-funded, organizations to make investments into downtown, which is in process, for people who live, work, visit, or do business downtown, what are some practical ways that a regular person can get involved and help create a more vibrant, inclusive, and economically resilient downtown Minneapolis, or even in their downtown wherever?
Well, I love this question, because like why why would you leave what your city is and is going to be in the hands of like official people, right? Like, I mean, you're in our town, we're a lot of creative people. No one's sitting around waiting for that. Like people do their own art in their own way and they bring it to spaces. I mean, what do you love would be the first thing I would say. What energizes you? What do you like to be around and see and experience? And how do you get connected with that? And how is that connected in your city and the networks of those folks that do that stuff? So like whether you love to go to shows and you're going to theater and, maybe then it's time for you to branch out from the big three you always go to and watch some more smaller community theater. Watch where they pop up. Small community theaters are always a great provisional use of a vacant space, and they use vacant spaces. So when you see that opportunity, I've seen former Sears, like vacant Sears store, loading dock. I've seen performances on that kind of space, and they're really exciting. So, there's exploring with your brain sort of popped open on the things that you love and how they intersect with your city and what's out there. You can also get more involved in community groups that are focused on specific initiatives, whether it's arts or whether it's environment, maybe it's greening and sustainability. All of these pathways have connections into downtown and how it activates downtown. And you can pick the channel that speaks the most to you and just put yourself into it. I mean, I don't think I'm overstating that COVID got people very comfortable if they were fortunate enough to not have to be a frontline worker, to work remotely from their house, that people kind of got used to like being a little bit more insular, being a little bit more disconnected from their community and around them. And it's like time to bust out of that. Because it's having an impact in your community, the fact that people aren't relating to one another socially, that we can't talk across difference. Like all of those things are things that happen in a downtown space, and it's time to kind of get out, stretch your I guess, willingness and openness to new experience, embrace the things you love, and get out and make a difference, I think, in your own communities.
And you don't have to be an independently wealthy person to do that. And you mentioned these pop-up performances, right? And those are oftentimes done in all reality just with shoestring budgets, for people that are passionate about the work, the art, the craft, and need a place to pursue said craft, creative outlet, profession, whatever it may be for them. Some are able to get into traditional theaters, but right, maybe it's a Sears loading dock, or maybe it's a park, or maybe it's a whatever it may be. There's a platform I don't think I've really shared with you yet that is nationwide or international now that we partner with, called soundspace.co. And what this gentleman has done tremendously is he gets offices, co-working spaces, any venue, churches that are, and we're trying to help him with Sacred Places get into more churches that have underutilized space that people need for rehearsal, performance.
What a great fit.
To be able to rent it on an hourly or daily basis. So if you maybe have a venue or you need a venue, and he's doing this nationwide pretty successfully.
There's a church downtown here that we should talk about, because Gethsemane Church is not an active church anymore, but they have I'm sorry, the atheist in me, I don't know what you call the front of the church, where it's not just the apse, it's like the whole altar and the whole front end. They've got a gorgeous church that's not in use anymore. We should talk about that.
Yeah, because this is another way, and so we're in the mindset and the model and the business now of unlocking closed doors to create new opportunities, and we take them on a meanwhile use basis with a minimum of a 6-month guaranteed runway before we go month to month, right, with a 30-day notice to vacate once a permanent tenant's secured. We understand, works for some, doesn't work for all. Yeah. Maybe not everybody's going to be willing to give up the space for that long. But if you want to generate revenue activity in the interim, there's opportunities like soundspace.co, or there's other platforms, Pure Space, so on and so forth. So yes, that's what I'm hoping.
That's what I love about this, because maybe this is just something I know a little too much about, but so many arts organizations think what they need to do is they need their own space. So some of it is security, and some of it is control and being able to hold that space for community and share it with community, not only when they're performing, but at other times. And I think the biggest challenge of that is the properties that most people in, most arts organizations get into. They're old buildings, they're derelict buildings sometimes. They've got legacy issues with their HVAC or their roof, I've just watched arts organization after arts organization just be swamped and drowned by the buildings that they're going into. So this idea that are there spaces that could be available to arts organizations, presenting organizations to use more durably without having to carry all the burden of all the capital costs and maintenance costs of a physical building itself. So that's just, you see that play out over and over again all across the country where we just, Jungle Theater just closed in Minneapolis, and it's really hard to take a theater space that's going to serve a very specific audience for a very specific time and make it pencil out as a viable going concern these days. It's just really hard to make that happen. All the other capital pressures, if you're not a nonprofit, taxes, all the things that are pressing on small organizations in order to maintain
staffing, administrative costs, marketing. There is so many things that go into this. That was what I was kind of hoping that for this conversation, if you're in economic development, if you're in placemaking, if you're in a community, or if you're in a role of power or not, hopefully the listener from this conversation will walk away with a better appreciation for all of what it takes now that we've discussed, from a busker street performer program to a storefront activation program to just having traditional leases happen in your downtown or in your community, in your city, whatever it may be. It doesn't just happen overnight. There's a lot of factors that we discussed today in the previous meeting that have to go into place to attract that Ulta or Sephora or Aldi or Trader Joe's. They don't just happen overnight or organically, and it's people like yourself, and this is the point of the podcast where we get to tell you that Lisa is legitimately the best person that we have worked with out of all of the cities that we're working with across the country. And I know she doesn't need to hear it, but we do need to say it because it doesn't go without saying that it takes passionate, dedicated, resourceful, knowledgeable people that care and give a damn like yourself to make the world and the communities that you live in a better place. So we're genuinely super grateful and appreciative for you, for everything that you've done for us, the Minneapolis community, to make this happen.
I just say to those of you out there who aren't in Minneapolis or something, know that there's a person like me, there's a Lisa in every one of the cities you're in, and just find them if you're interested in getting more involved. Because I'm not a unicorn. People do this work all over the country, and people care about the art and artists and what they can bring to this dynamic in these moments of opportunity around space and downtown. So find them. They're there, I promise.
There are.
Engage in that conversation.
Google your local, whatever your city, county is, economic development officer, placemaker. They might have a different title in different places, revitalization specialist or whatever it may be. In Florida, we have CRAs, Community Redevelopment Associations. In Ohio, they have CDCs, Community Development Corporations. But generally, it's one of those, a business improvement district, a BID, a downtown, an EDC, an EDO, whatever it may be. You do have it in your community, if you know it or not, large or small. Or even, main streets or, whatever the organization may be. My friend Ryan Smore runs Placemaking US, which is a network of organizations that you can tap into to find them locally. So appreciate you letting me say that. So from an outside investment perspective, what type of businesses, employers, developers, entrepreneurs, institutions, or experiences would you most like to attract to downtown Minneapolis? And what opportunities do you believe outside investors may currently be overlooking?
I think there's something about us as a city reputationally that's shifted a little bit for people. I think, for people who maybe visited, maybe they knew about our parks or knew about our arts. I think something has changed a little bit in how our community stood up for one another that I think makes people interested in this place and thinking about what's different here, or what kind of community is that there that fostered that. And so I think, for the types of businesses or employers or developers who are interested in investing in a community and like all that that means, I think there's something here for them. I also just think being able to represent fully all that we are culturally, the great range of what we are as a city and a country always appeals to me. So like we work with a lot of entrepreneurs who have, maybe we have a store that's just about to open next month, Nature Syrup, which is a beauty product line that's specifically tailored for people who have brown skin and curly hair, like, kinky hair. And like that's a different product line that you need for that. And having someone who's like worked in that community has taken the time to develop beautiful natural products that serve that population that we haven't seen in our downtown before, that's exciting too, right? Like, so thinking about how we represent our culture and community most fully, our creative folks as well. Like, I mean, that's just really exciting. And then people who just want to be in a place where people really care and take care of one another in a, not a facile, easy commitment way. Like a lot of us put a lot on the line and I think have demonstrated that there's something different going on here. And I think, that I'm excited to work with folks that are interested in that. If they want a very sanitized suburban experience and they want to manufacture that downtown, I'm really not interested, right? Like right. I just think downtowns are not about that, and you can get that experience out in the burbs, and honestly, that's where you should get it, right? Like downtown is about something different. It's about that collision of cultures, that creative friction that comes when all this stuff is happening in one place, the excitement you get from working in a space that has more of that going on. I just think that's like who I think belongs downtown, right? And who we're trying to attract, if that makes sense.
And if somebody is interested and would like to get a hold of you and your office,
call me up.
Well, so what email, website?
Absolutely. I should give them to you so you can write them down. But I'm Lisa Middag. I'm our Senior Director of Economic Development at the Minneapolis Downtown Council and Downtown Improvement District. My email is lmiddagg@mplsdid.com.
Awesome. And the website, they could find more about all the things we
Absolutely.
discussed.
Come look at our website. Most of our economic development work is under the Do Business tab on our website. You can see the things we've done with our Chameleon program, with our economic data, and we have a downtown retail inventory that's like way more accurate than anything that you could read. Down to the square foot of what we have available, and all of our small business supports, including our Chameleon program. So like, come check us out, learn more, and reach out if you want to engage.
How about that? And if you'd like to find out more about Zero Empty Spaces, you could follow us at Zero Empty Spaces, zeroemptyspaces.com. Email us, info@zeroemptyspaces. Glad to answer any questions. We will have a great grand opening here in the not too distant future once we have some more artists to move in. You can find previous examples on our YouTube page of all the grand openings that we've had and ribbon cuttings and seeing our spaces activated. Because I know we are new to market, and not everybody knows yet or is familiar or doesn't understand the concept, but we take large spaces, we subdivide them into smaller spaces, we rent them on a month-to-monthly basis. Some of these spaces start at $250 a month. You get not only the space, but you get professional development support, marketing support, public relations support, career development support, all included in the lease, no extra fees. When NPR calls and asks to do an interview, or Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine, we don't charge the artists extra to get in the press coverage. It's part of the program. It's part of our, benefits of being arts advocates and, community builders and placemakers, that this is the work that we love to do, that this is rewarding and fulfilling for me personally and professionally. And that's why I'm so grateful to have the support of somebody also passionate like yourself, and that also fortunately has that arts background. So the last question that I'm going to wrap up with here on the podcast, from your perspective, what impact can affordable, dedicated studio space outside the home have on artists, surrounding businesses, neighborhoods, and the broader downtown economy?
Well, I'm married to an artist. My husband's a photographer. So I can tell you having a space outside the home is sometimes like it's just saving your immediate relationship, I think sometimes, So let's not dismiss the very personal benefit of it. But just being able to be in a creative space around other creative people to build that community that sustains. We've talked a lot about community and how that works. It's just different in a space where a lot of artists are gathering together and are able to kind of build that community together. So I think that kind of resilience that comes from like, I'm having a rough day, I can't paint shit, and what's going on with me? And your neighbor is like, oh man, I had a day like that last week. And there's just someone who can relate to your creative challenge of the moment, or maybe has ideas and new ways to collaborate with what you're working on. That experience of being in a studio is so dynamic. What doing that in a space of a downtown does is it really helps open up the arts and creative practice to people who maybe want to help support it, are very interested in it, but don't like dynamically participate in it. Like I'm an art collector. I mean, I crochet a bit, I write a bit. I don't call myself an artist. I call myself more of an art supporter. But I love to collect art, and I have original art from artists in my community all over my house. I can't wait to find the piece here in this space that really speaks to me that I can buy and help support an artist in their livelihood. So having places where these creative experiences of artists working together can change the dynamic of how it feels to be downtown for someone who might just walk by and go, what is all that going on? What is all that amazing, gorgeous color going on in there? I'm gonna step in there and see what's there, and thinking about how that might change the dynamic of that person's experience downtown. That's kind of that's the magic elixir, right? That is what artists can bring. Of course, there's the importance in the social landscape of how artists capture, what it is about our time and what we're struggling with, and how we represent that through artwork or traumas we've experienced and all of that. And we have a fair amount of that here in the city too. And having that be something we can experience and work through together through these creative spaces is just like that's incalculable. Right? Like that's the incalculable offering that artists, just by being who they are, give to community. And downtowns all over the country need that. And downtown Minneapolis needs it too. So
you heard it from your lips to God's ears. Preaching to the choir. Yeah. And, it's been one of the coolest parts of having spaces downtown that people walk by daily on their way to work, on their way to drop their kids off at daycare, on their way to where they live, whatever the case may be, and they tell us, or they tell the artists when they acquire their work, I watched this piece transform through the window over a week, 2 weeks, whatever. Most people only ever see the finished product of a painting. They don't see the process. They don't meet the artist generally, and especially if you're buying from a gallery or a curator or interior designer. So by being able to connect with the artist, where you can also commission them, you can have a conversation with them, you can get to know them, really does further the connection to the creative process, the creative work that most people, because artist studios are generally also traditionally in the parts of town, the industrial warehouse districts where the rents are generally the cheapest, where people are generally not walking to,
right, that
it's now making the art front and center. And we're so glad to do that, even though, just the last part I'll just say, while it is a meanwhile use on a temporary basis, our spaces on average are running 36 months. We have multiple spaces running 5 and 6 years respectively. People ask us, it's not permanent. What in life is permanent?
Yeah.
How about that? So
that's good. Maybe that's a good note to end on.
That is a good note. So appreciate you tuning in. We look forward to having you join us here at 815 Nicolette, Suite 100. At the Nicolette Mall in downtown Minneapolis. Stay tuned for our grand opening reception coming up soon here. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Don't hesitate to reach out to Lisa. We're open books, and we're working to make the world a better place through the arts. Thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you.